Hey there, neighbor. Welcome to Wild Homestead Living. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Julie, and this is our July Homestead Hangout where we are going to update you on what happened this month. And let me tell you, it flew by. Some of the highlights we're going to cover are the things that are going well in the garden and the things that are not going so well, plus exciting wildlife developments.
Let's get started. This is our fourth Homestead Hangout video, and we created this series based on requests from friends and neighbors who wanted monthly updates on what's going on here on our homestead.
And it's our hope that these videos give you that information and show you that there's really no one right way to homestead, only the way that's right for you.
If you have questions for us or things you'd like to see us focus on, feel free to reach out to us through our website or drop a comment in the comment section below.
And we encourage you to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can be the first to know when we put out new videos, as well as sign up for our email newsletter, which you can do over at wildhomesteadliving.com, and we send exclusive content to our community that way.
The two places things are going best are in the greenhouse and in our patio garden. We were a little worried that the greenhouse would get too hot without proper ventilation, but the tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers seem to be doing well. On the back 40, or our patio container garden, the tomatoes, eggplants, and summer squash are all putting on fruit. We lost most of our cabbage during the heat wave last month, but one is heading up nicely.
After removing most of the potentially poisoned straw mulch, we ended up with a great pea crop. We removed that in July and planted beans. Honestly, it might be a little bit too late for beans, and with our potentially damaged soil, they might not even thrive that well, but we thought it was worth a try. Only time will tell.
Because we believe some of the straw that we used to mulch our garden may have been contaminated with herbicides, we decided to set up a bioassay test here in our guest bathtub this month to see if that really is the case. It's a simple test in which we took soil from the beds we believe are contaminated and also soil from a source that we know is not contaminated, and planted plants in each of those, and we'll just see the growth difference between them. Julie and I are both scientists, so the idea of being able to test our hypothesis is really exciting to us. And stay tuned next month and we'll see how this little experiment turns out.
Did you catch our how-to video and article about making herbal infusions? These brews are a great way to add some extra nutrition into your diet and really quench the thirst on a hot day.
So a few months ago, I mentioned in one of our videos that we were replacing the roof on the house, and I also mentioned that we were in need of some siding repair. Well, during the roof installation, it became apparent that we had a much bigger problem with the siding than we first thought. It appears that the previous owner of the home just slapped some paint over a lot of really rotten siding, and that paint's now beginning to peel and show what's underneath. So we now believe we need a whole house re-side, and to that end we had some bids written up this month, and we've decided to go ahead and re-side the house. It's a lot more expensive than we first thought, but we are going to do this right and make something that lasts so the next owners of this house aren't stuck with the same problem that we have right now.
What that means for us is something pretty heartbreaking, which is that we're going to have to put off other homesteading and sustainability projects that are really dear to us, including building a real greenhouse, a chicken coop, and making over our guest bedroom, which we talked about in a video last fall.
When we do return to those projects, though, we're going to do them the right way, and we're going to create things that are beautiful and last. And we're going to do it in a way that's financially responsible so we don't get in over our heads and have to live with the stress of that. Although many species completed raising their young during the month, our property was still alive with wildlife activity during July. We saw this activity both on and off of our trail cams. We're here on the wooded part of our property because we came out to check our game cam, which is attached to the back of this vine maple branch. But directly behind the game cam, we have evidence of a wildlife drama that played out right here, starting up on top of this branch. There's a shower of feathers coming down all the way to the ground. These are feathers that have clearly been plucked cleanly. This is evidence that a bird of prey, most likely a Cooper's hawk, fed on another bird here on the branch. And judging from the color and the size of these feathers, it was probably a juvenile robin. So this is a reminder that even though we have game cams that can see, animals that come through, there are other ways that you can find evidence of animals on your property, including tracks and sign such as this. Finding the evidence that a Cooper's hawk had been living on our property was pretty exciting, but as we made our way back towards the house, we found evidence of an even larger predator that had been using our yard. We just came from the woods over here where we were checking the game cam and found that pile of feathers. On our way back to the house, we found another type of animal sign on the lawn here, which is this big pile of poop. Ordinarily, wouldn't be thrilled to find a pile of poop on the lawn, but I happen to know this comes from an American black bear. I worked for nearly 2 decades with these animals, so I have a pretty good idea of what their poop looks like. We know that they've been on the property before. We found one other pile of scat and some tracks in the past. One of our earlier videos featured a glimpse that was caught on our game cams, but it's exciting to know that one was here recently, again visiting the property. After finding the bear scat, we hoped to catch a glimpse of the bear on our trail cam. Instead, we found a deer, 2 different coyotes, one of whom clearly saw the camera and tried to avoid it. We had another visit from this large possum that we saw last month. I'm assuming it's the same individual. And we had a very small Townsend's chipmunk as well. So we assumed the scat was all we were going to see of the bear, and we moved on to reviewing the footage from our trail cam closer to the house. We saw the coyote with the limp from last month. She's still around and still surviving. And then we saw this. We had assumed that the bear moved through the forest and popped out onto the lower part of the property to relieve himself, but instead he strolled right up to the house casually, and then around the garden fence, and he headed down to the lower part of the property where he left his calling card. A lot of people might find it scary if they see a bear on their property, but we find it exciting. We know that the dead cottonwood trees pose more of a threat to us than these bears strolling through, and so Julie goes about watering the garden here, feeling perfectly safe. Speaking of water, the pool we put out in June to provide a water source for wildlife continued to be popular throughout July. It was mostly monopolized by a resident crow family, and the parents were often seen dropping the kids off at the pool so they could go forage to fill their ever-increasing demands for food. The crows also provided Julie with some entertainment in July by constantly moving one of the copper tape rings she made to protect plants in the perimeter garden from slugs. We even caught one of the crows in the act on camera. And we also caught Julie making a request of our feathered neighbors afterwards.
Guys, don't put it in the garden.
Crows weren't the only animals taking advantage of this water source. On several occasions, the camera captured deer stopping for a drink. The wetland at the bottom of our property dries up in July, so this water source makes life a little easier for our wild neighbors. And if the camera footage is any indication, we have a lot of deer for neighbors. On some days in July, it seemed like the camera was tripped every few minutes by a passing deer. I don't know if these were all different individuals or just a single doe trying to make sure she would get plenty of airtime in the July Homestead Hangout. Seriously though, we've seen at least 5 different does in the yard at once, and they come through night and day. We also have this young buck, as well as the older buck seen in our earlier trail cam footage. The telling thing is that we have all these deer right next to our garden, but we don't have conflict with these animals. Sure, they may sample the perimeter garden, which we expected and planned for, but our fencing design and layout prevents them from eating the plants we actually care about. It is possible to peacefully coexist. And that's a good thing, because the next generation of deer has arrived, as can be seen here. This fawn wandered past, followed shortly by a smaller sibling who was wary of the kiddie pool. She decided to take a different path than her sibling. When Mom arrived, she had a choice to make. She decided to follow the smaller fawn. Although both Baby and Mom became startled and bolted back the way they had come. Here it is again, a bit slower. It really is a privilege to share our property with wildlife, and this scene from our breakfast one morning in July sums up our approach to avoiding conflict. A mother deer wandered by with her fawn as we ate. You can see our 2 cats, Opal and Emmett, peering out through the fence, probably dreaming that they're cougars, but safely contained and under our supervision. The fence also keeps the deer out when we aren't looking, so we are all able to live in close proximity with minimal impact on one another. And our fences continued to help us maintain neighborly relations with the eastern cottontails on our property in July. We know there are things in our garden these rabbits would find much more delicious than the dandelion and clover in the yard, but we've effectively prevented them from having access to it, so we can enjoy their presence instead of feeling stressed by it. Last but not least, some of our resident songbirds have finished raising this year's brood and can now be seen foraging with no babies in tow. They are also doing a lot of preening as they're going through their post-breeding season molt, and their new feathers require a bit of extra care. This spotted towhee And the song sparrow even spent some time preening together, showing a little solidarity as parents finally free to put their own needs first, now that the babies had literally flown the nest.
This month we visited Alderleaf Wilderness College and Farm, which is owned by our good friends Jason and Carrie. We got some really great insights with them on camera. The first video and article in that series is available now, with more installments to come.
So July is important for us for a reason that's not quite so homesteading related.
Yes, July is the month that we flew to Las Vegas, rented a convertible, and got married at the drive-thru.
Yes, indeed.
And do you remember the other wedding parties that were there that night?
I do. I remember there was 2 other wedding parties. They were not using the drive-thru. They were in the chapel waiting for Elvis. And one of them was waiting for young Elvis, and one of them was waiting for old Elvis to marry them. But neither Elvis had showed up that night.
Neither Elvis was in the building. And I had my own set of nerves going on, I think, because I put the ring on the wrong finger in the drive-thru.
Yes, you did.
And then we flew back and told everybody that we were married because we had eloped, which surprised everybody that 2 naturalists would get married at a drive-thru in Las Vegas. But much like homesteading, there's no one right way to get married, only the right way for you. And we did what was right for us, and 15 years later, I think it turned out pretty well.
I do too.
We didn't really do any sewing or crafting projects this month, but I'm starting to think about what kinds of projects we might want to do in the fall and winter, which has got me thinking about these wax canvas bags, which is one of my all-time favorite projects. Thinking about doing a mini course or workshop on making these, and I'm wondering if that's something you would be interested in. If you are, I'd love to know in the comments below.
Well, there you go. There's some highlights from our homestead for the month of July.
We'd love to know if anything in this video resonated with you. You can go ahead and wherever you're watching, scroll down and leave a comment. And we'd also love for you to know that we have a free Quick Start Vegetable Gardening Guide that you can download for free at our website at wildhomesteadliving.com.
Thanks so much for watching.
We'll see you next time.
The bear here. Questions answered.
Hey there, neighbor. How are you doing? Most of our neighbors I like to have a little bit of space from, but this is cool.